Hi everyone, it is 10:45, so we are gonna get started slowly. So we're gonna give you a presentation on performance portability for the people. In general, it's this idea that our libraries are more than just code, they're projects. They involve developers, users, stakeholders. And so while it's very important to have your code scale well, there's a whole lot aspect to how to get a project to be sustainable in the long run and build a community around it. And so this is going to be the topic of this presentation. I'm Luc Berger-Vergiat from Sandia National Labs, and my colleagues here is Damien Lebrun-Grandié from Oak Ridge. He's one of the leads for the Kokkos core library, and I'm one of the leads for the Kokkos kernels library. All right, and Damien is going to do the presentation, and then we're going to take together questions afterwards.
Thank you, Luc. And so the goal for the presentation, and by the end, you know what a community playbook is. You see why we want to do it on the Kokkos side, and you think whether that applies to what you're doing. So a little bit of background for the Kokkos world. How did we end up there? So the challenge we were trying to tackle was that the Kokkos project started a long time ago, 16 plus years ago in Sandia as a research project, and it pretty evolved from there. It was for a while a package in Trinos before it became a standalone project. Then the exascale computing project is really what got it from a single lab effort to a multinational, multi-organization effort. And with the culmination when we joined HPSF a couple of years ago. So we went from a single lab effort where agreeing on priorities and working together was just as hard as walking down the hall to talk to the next colleague, to a place where there is, so here I have the three major organizations, Oak Ridge, Sandia, and CA that work there, but we have collaborators at I think 9 labs now. And so the collaboration spans, many time zones, different of culture and whatnot, and that comes with friction. And so how do we make sure that everybody knows what the project is about and what needs to be done? So what happened was Luc and I got aware of some training program organized by the Bird Arrow Foundation, which is a new foundation that was in collaboration with CSCCE, which is I think the Center for Scientific Collaboration and Community Engagement. And so it's a new training program for open source leaders. And so they were trying to identify teams for the inaugural training. And so Luc and I applied, and we got selected as one of the many projects, one of 24 projects that to take part in the program. So if you see on the right-hand side, there were many projects with various level of maturity. So there is the R project, like the language. There is CCAN, so many very well-known projects. Among the projects, there were also things a bit less mature. But anyway, so this program was 12 weeks long, from the fall all the way to mid-December. And so the program was composed of 3 different phases, so mini workshops where we discussed giving and receiving feedback, making collective decision, a lot about community governance and structure, how do you design for collaborative activities, and how you work with volunteers, which are all things that we had kind of learned the hard way, and it was really refreshing for us to get in the room with other open source developers and discuss these challenges. And then so the interesting part that I'm going to focus on this talk is how you create a community playbook. Okay, so let's start with what's a community playbook. So, it can be several things. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve. For us, and maybe for many of you guys, that can be your contributor guide. But it can also be a best practice manual, a user guide, onboarding packet, etc. It depends on the context and the level of maturity of your project and whatnot. And for some projects, you might actually have several playbooks if you have to coordinate between different types of people. So why create a community playbook? So the key thing is you want to smooth collaboration across the structural barriers. So you saw how Kokkos went from single institution colleagues that work a proposal together, that knew each other, that had the same source of funding, to many of us trying to collaborate with different funding agency, different culture, different time zone. So having written down how we function can help a lot with this. It can also help with advocating for the community and help managing the community. And it's also about being strategic and avoiding having some of your champions burn out because they have over and over again to be the interface with everybody in your community, and that may work up to a point, but Kokkos went way beyond it. I mean, just the core team has over 20 developers now, and if you look at the extended team, we're more in like 30 plus. So just having one or two person talking to everybody doesn't really work anymore. So for major questions that you need to answer about your playbook before you go into it, who and what your playbook is for. So as Kokkos is concerned, it's for all the contributors, from the developers, but also for aspiring contributors that would want to get involved and just contribute something. Then you need to ask yourself what's the appropriate format for your playbook. And yeah, it depends on the context. But that's one thing you need to think about. For a lot of us, because we develop code, some online resources like read the docs or whatnot on your website are good media, but it depends, right? Then one important thing that you need to ask yourself earlier than later is how you will maintain it later. You don't want to have this be just yet another burden on yourself to keep it up to date. If you're just going to do it as one shot, you might as well not do it. You will have, it's a living document, and you're going to have to invest time to keep it useful. And then you need to also ask yourself how you will socialize your playbook when it's ready, how you will make sure that everybody on your team, on your community knows about it, knows how to find it, and whatnot. So here I extracted this from the training from CSCC, and this is kind of a framework to help you think about your playbook and prepare it. One thing we learned, so it's a bit daunting when you see everything, but one thing you realize very quickly is you actually probably have a lot of this content on your project. It's just that it's often over time scattered over different places, different, some of it may be updated, and you need to, you kind of want to do the exercise to discover all of these things were there. So the important question is the why. What are you trying to achieve? You should probably ask yourself this before you jump and write things. And so what are you gonna want to do with it? Then the who is it for? So for us, it's for developers and contributors that will really help framing what you're trying to write. The how is about what are the processes that you want to document. So for us, it's things like the pull request workflow, how do we do reviews, how do we prepare releases, this kind of good stuff, making sure that we write that down, and so that eventually someone can take over and we're not all parallelized because we're not all blocked because someone is on vacation. Then The where is about, it's kind of about the tools. Where do you communicate? So things like what are your channel of communication? What are the tools you use? So for us, it's like Slack, the Linux Foundation Insights tooling with all the meetings and whatnot. Where are your calendars? This kind of stuff. And the when is what events do you have? When are there? The various developer meetings or working group meetings. So now let's go specifically into the Kokkos playbook. So what are we trying to solve? So the most important thing for us is norm setting. We want to make sure that everybody's aligned and know what we're trying to achieve. It's trying to write down some of the design principles that we had in the early days and might have been lost over time. The other very important one is scaling. Being able to onboard newcomers and make sure that there is no secret handshake that you can only get by talking to one of the leaders to know what it takes to become a developer. Another big part is transparency, to build trust, so that everybody knows how you make decisions and how you function as a group. It's another challenge that we had, that it was kind of obscure for people, opaque, how we were making decisions. A governance, will help you, but it's not everything. Helping you smooth collaboration across the different barriers, across the Atlantic, across, NNSA lab versus university, so that can help you. And then the last thing that we hope it will help is advocating for the community, help showcasing what you can do with our project and whatnot. So the format is the structure. So for us, we wanted to have virtually everything publicly on kokkos.org with all the source code that can be managed out of GitHub, because it's workflow for developers that we're all used to. And I think it will speak to a lot of projects here because we all write code. So we found that's much more efficient than having a WordPress server somewhere where you need to ask for permissions, just the workflow we used to. For documentation, so we haven't used Thanks, but it doesn't really matter what technology you're using, just what works for your project. And we do have some development repository that for internal agendas. So it doesn't mean that you need to have everything public, but you've got to do an inventory of all your information and make it that people who will have access can even know that it exists. Don't we all have some wiki somewhere that describe a process, but that no one, almost no one in the project knows about? And so how we structure the playbook, I mean, the section you can ignore, but what we have currently and what we're trying to organize is some things that we see as the community foundation. So our code of conduct, the team directory, which was one thing actually that was pretty challenging for us recently when we had to get the org ID for all the developers, emails, Slack handles, this kind of thing. It sounds silly, but when you have more than 5 in your team, which is our case, that becomes quickly a nightmare when you want to put together some proposal or some paper. So that's what we want the community foundation to be. The development workflow, so we want to have an easy to find places that has stuff like coding standards, peer and code review practices, all of the things that you would expect a developer to understand how you function. Then we want a section on project operation that describes the release process and support policy. So that someone understand what it takes, all the steps, kind of a checklist to the releases, but also what do we support? Like we have developed over the years a support policy, but it's still living scattered across a number of presentations, and we have to make sure that everybody, anyone, even users, can find out what we will support and how. And then the last thing, we need to invest more time on impact, and we are trying to revive our downstream application registry so that we can advertise to our sponsors why they're paying and why it's worth investing in our project. Okay, going again over the anatomy of the playbook for Kokkos. Yeah, it's defining really clearly the different roles, leads versus maintainers, developers, all the places that you use for communication, where are these places, how do you find them, and integrating everything into our normal access point, which is our website, and trying to make it that someone who's not you will quickly understand where to find all this good stuff. And so, again, it's a living document and work in progress, and you need to try to make it really easy for people, for your developers to work on it. So it's a bit small, but for instance, on this page, if you look, there is an edit button that will take anyone who sees event user to the source and let them propose changes to the document. Last time to insist again on not just processes. You really want, so we want this application registry to keep track of who's using us and where. We want to be able to advertise our success stories, like throughout blog posts, and we have tea time session, some presentation, and we want this playbook to support also the long-term health of the project, which means it needs to be useful for people to talk to funding agencies. So briefly, our maintenance plan. So you need, as you build, when you have your playbook, you need to make a plan for maintaining it. So you need to identify all the sections that will need to be updated. So the release process and support policy are things that don't change too much. But there are stuff like agendas, notes, directory that will change much more often. So you need to think ahead of time at what will need update and who's going to be in charge of it. So the application registry I talked about, it's something that we're going to try to have users contribute, and we're going to have some of us in charge of contributing. And for all of this category, you probably want to think about the frequency at which you will want to review it. So for us, what we decided is, since we release every 4 months, and we had already process in place to review documentation every 4 months, we're going to do this at the same frequency. And then the important thing is you've got to make sure you know who's responsible for taking care of this data, which for us is more or less the entire developer team. And so, you invest time making it easy for them to understand where the source is and how things work. And then, it's just as easy as a pull request to update things. Anyway, so what I'm hoping that you get out of this thing is that a sustainable project is really, the human part is really important. And for Kokkos, so we're only as portable as our onboarding process. And technical excellence gets you to exascale, but this is really your human infrastructure that will keep you there. So with that, I'm done with the presentation, and we'll be taking questions if you have any.
So I had a question. So, as a member of the Kokkos team, I think this works very effectively for our team as large and international as the Kokkos team. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts about smaller teams. So like, for example, I work on a team of maybe like 4 people and, just in one institution, and, how we can learn from that and apply some of the principles that you talked about here, but maybe with like a little less overhead, because we can't create like all of the kind of documents and so on that Kokkos has.
I'll give Damien a little break talking. I'll take this one. So That's a good question. You know, your team, you have to right-size the playbook for your team. You have to think about, as we said, some of the components are like, what are you trying to achieve? Who are you serving? You know, where, etc. And so I think the playbook, you have to be careful when you craft it and size it the right way for your team. If your team is really small and some of the processes can be like easier to like get consensus around, you might, you know, maybe go a little bit faster over some of the, you know, some of these sections. I think as we grow, we talked a lot about scalability, and like we mentioned, if the knowledge of how to onboard someone is like a single person, at some point as the scale grows, you know, you're out. You can't just keep on doing that and keep bugging that person like 100% of their time to repeat the same speech. So it's really part of what this is about, and it's also hopefully, while this is a potentially for some painful effort at the beginning, as you go along with your project, you should see that you reap the benefit of having like, you know, clear processes, clear documentation, so that people know what to expect from your project. And so that, you know, I would focus on like where you get most return as usual.
Thank you.
First, this is really nice work. I like this a lot. Second, have you noticed, and maybe it's too soon, that this makes your stuff more findable from AI tools, agentic environments, things like that? Because it seems like, to me, that would be a really nice thing to have as well. I'm guessing it could be. It's pretty structured, right? But I'm just curious if you had experienced it, or if you have an idea of how to experiment with that.
No, I haven't. One thing I had realized when we started working on it was that it was a gigantic mess, our access point, and if you weren't in the team, it was good luck to find anything. So we tried to look at it with new eyes, like if it was the first. I actually navigated a lot of other projects. Websites like Jenkins and whatnot, project I was less familiar with, and I saw what they were doing really well, and I tried to inspire myself on this. So I'm not really answering your question because I didn't really work with AI, but another thing we were doing is we are also trying to understand a bit how people look at our website with Google Analytics. And you know, some things that were kind of important and lost when we asked ourselves why no one was looking at this. And so we had some kind of retrospective and tried to improve navigation through our website.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I think it's super systematic and super useful. It's great that you adopt those. I will definitely take a look there where we have gaps and try to copy paste and fill gaps where we see them. And we had similar experience, like even with language, like creating a glossary of all the acronyms and weird terms, what we mean. Like when you come to a physicist and talk about an experiment, something different than a computer scientist talks about an experiment. Helps a lot to get people on. In your onboarding process, do you pair this additionally, like having a mentor assigned, and ideally not the most senior person in the project, but someone that's also like learned this themselves? Or how do you execute this in practice? Is it just like read all the docs?
So our onboarding story is one of the one that we're trying to improve at the moment, work in progress. So right now we've been really focusing on the processes because we realized we grew so much that there are people that have been with us for a long time that didn't even know about some of the processes. So what we do for people that are already in the team is we have stuff like we do for releases, we do release briefings. So every release we have a public talk, and we've started rotating through the team with the hope, and it sounds like it's been working, that people then understand a bit better why we do things and how we do things. For newcomers, honestly, it's at the moment it's really weak what we do. We've always been trying to peer them with someone a bit more senior, and we're moving slowly away from this secret handshake with Christian or Luc, but yeah, it takes time.
Yeah, I was just gonna add one last thing. It also, naturally, we try to find people who, like when we have a new person, they usually we might have an idea of like where it's a good place to start. And typically, if we can, we try to pair them with someone we know on the team who will be already knowledgeable with this area of technical concern. And I mean, the other thing that's part of onboarding is it's really important to quote unquote welcome people in the team and just chat a little bit with them and make sure that they can, you know, see us as approachable people, because sometimes the only interaction you'd have with us otherwise is like during these formal meetings where, you know, some people might be viewed as like, oh, that's the guy who gives us, you know, what to do, and you know, we don't want to be too, you know, too strict and too scary for the newcomers. So yeah.
So to build on a couple of the earlier questions with small teams, if you guys were going to start a new project today, what of this work would you preemptively do so that you're not struggling to pull all of this together with a larger project in the future? Like what small, even if it's just very little to get started, would you put in place in a really early repo?
So I'll start it now. Yeah. For me, two things that we didn't do very well at the beginning. One was really have kind of, for the documentation, you can say you'd want multiple documentations. You want something for people to get started. You want something for people to read the API in case they're more advanced and they're just looking for a very specific, you know, answer. And then you maybe want something for the developers. Like, you know, if you're a developer, how do you do things? And I think, at least for my part of the library, the big mistake I did is these documents, I view them as targeting different communities within the project, and so they are scattered across different places, and some of them are access controlled, and so now I'm like, crap. It's like a big burden to like backpedal and bring everything together and make it more uniform, and I'm like, why did we put access control on some of these things? It's actually completely fine to just tell everyone like that's how we designed stuff, like, you know, some of the more developer-oriented things, and yeah. So it looked like a good idea to have it like in the convenient place for the developers only, but now it's, yeah. So make it uniform, make it easy for people to discover. I think Damien covered it, but yeah, I would say that that's the one place where otherwise you're going to be regretting your life later.
So some mistake we've done were like definitely capturing some of the philosophy behind some of the design we had, and I think the key thing is just try to integrate it in the documentation and make it such so that people will know how to edit it. Just the same way, you know, you have your API, have it part of your process, and it's not going to be perfect, but people will find it and will be able to improve it. The people who will onboard, for instance, will tell you, I didn't know where to find this thing, and if you have the structure, they will add it. If you have nothing, they won't get started.
So a lot of your talk was on onboarding and how to get people up and contributing, say, quickly. How do you go about defining what the project's priorities are and making sure that people work towards those tasks? Is that also open, or is there like, again, that's sort of maybe closed behind doors and the project leaders get to decide, do this, do that?
So it depends on your project, right? And that's what, so one of the great things about starting this foundation was that, you know, to even become a member, even at the emerging stage, you had to develop a governance which was forcing you to actually tell to the world your mechanism to make decision and what were the different roles. So as far as Kokkos is concerned, we still have some leadership team that you know, define these priorities. We are trying to develop process so that we can get feedback from the community and the developers. But it's pretty up to you. You don't necessarily have to. If you function behind closed door, I guess you just have to document that's how you do it and who do you need to contact if you want to suggest something. Anyway, I think we are out of time. Thank you very much.